to the cloud. So again, when I brought up the issue of the virtual minyan, there were different kind of objections. So some would be halachic objections, but for a lot of people it was really a structural objection because they were concerned that will take away people from the synagogues. So that is a completely different issue about the fear that if we will allow people to have a virtual minyan, they will not come to the synagogue, and that has to be assessed on the from the perspective of how do we really connect to the community, right? There's such a great fear from social media and all that, but we have to remember that even not in the Jewish realm, social media is mostly a retelling of interactions between real people. Even those who sit at home and do their own, vloggers, whatever they are, if they will tell only about themselves with no relation to the outside world, at a certain point it will die out. People need connection, and they need physical connection. And actually, psychologists prove that. They did the studies that show that yes, kid will cling to their devices, but that is if you don't give them an option of physical contact. And the parents are as guilty here as the children are, because the parents, for them it's comfortable. The kid doesn't bother me, let them go to their room and be with their iPad or iPhone or whatever it is. It's safer than going outside, right? But if you took the time to go with the child to an event, to a game, to be with friends, they would. The facts show that children prefer that, hanging out with friends physically, than being at home alone on their devices. It's just the question of what opportunity do we give them. So the same we take this and apply it to the synagogue. The reason the people don't come to the synagogue is not because they have now a certain synagogue that live streams the event or not. It's what sense of community they find in the synagogue. If you come to shul and everybody sits in their own seat and they don't look at you, they don't know you, and they don't and you don't feel connected, then you will go less. If you feel connected either to the people or to the drasha or to the reading in your own world, you'll go. So it's not about social media will not take away from that. So I think that's really a non-realistic concern that because people have the option to use a virtual minyan or social media or these platforms, they will stop going to the synagogue. If there is a flaw, it's in the way we conduct the tefillah in the synagogues. And there's a problem, by the way, in all communities. Most communities, maybe except for the ultra orthodox, what the people like the Haredi, have the problem that during the week the minyan is about 10% or 15% the volume of the regular minyan. Okay, but that's regarding the problem of attendance. But from the point of view of halacha, the argument was that halacha always speaks about davar shebekdusha, which is either the kaddish or the kedusha or the amidah, that must be recited when there are 10 people present, right? And that all 10 must be in the same room. So this is a basic argument. Now, I showed in the article that there are certain situations where people are not exactly in the same room. There are two such situations. One is when they speak about someone who lives next to the synagogue and when he opens his window and he can see the people in the synagogue. In this case, they are not under the same roof by any stretch of the imagination, right? They're not under the same roof. Still, halacha says that he counts as the 10th for a kaddish. The other one is what is called al pnei sadeh, when people are in an open field, and let's say it could be in the cemetery or workers in the field, literally farmers, and they need to pray together. They can't all gather in one place, and they raise their voice, and they know that they hear each other. They're not under the same roof. They're not in the vicinity. Still, we count them together. So that shows that the problem or the goal, what we want to achieve when we speak about 10 people gathering together to be able to have that concept of kedusha, and let's assume that the rabbis assessed that you need 10 people for the divine presence to dwell there. Fine. So why do we need them all to be under one roof? Because that was the only way in antiquity to know that they're all on the same page. What other way is there, unless you see them all in one place, or the two exceptions, through the window or spread around the field, right? There's no way to coordinate a prayer where 10 people pray together, even if all of us, right now we are on this virtual room, we are 16 people, right? Let's say we decide without the virtual room, without the Zoom, let's decide that tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're all going to say Kaddish. Can we count on us having a minyan? No, if we don't coordinate that, because maybe someone fell asleep, maybe someone, had an emergency and a million other things. We don't know. So in antiquity, there was no other way to tell that 10 people are saying it simultaneously. Actually, I would argue that the insistence of everybody being in the same physical space, in a way, I would say it's close to heresy, because we're diminishing the omnipotence and the omniscience of God. Kadosh Baruch Hu knows where everybody is at every given time and hears the prayers, right? Who needs to be under the same roof for the Kedusha to be? Not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We need it because we can tell that we're doing it together. So by having this possibility of connecting through a virtual room, we are now elevating ourselves closer to God. That's the idea. Anyway, I brought it up 7-8 months ago, and I guess people thought it was not that necessary. I did argue that it's important not only for people who are lazy and don't want to go to the synagogue, but also people who cannot go to the synagogue, either because they're bedridden, or they are caretakers for people who are bedridden, people in military bases around the world, doctors in ERs. I mean, there are a million situations where people don't have this luxury of being able to be at the shul and saying Kaddish at the time where people pray. As a matter of fact, the Mishnah Berurah says that if someone is going to lose money, even a small amount of money, by not going, by missing work, even for a couple of minutes, by going to the synagogue, that's called a tzorech gadol, and he can stay and pray at home. We just got used to a certain lifestyle. We think everything is possible. Anyway, that was 7 months ago, and now all of a sudden, in the last week, not God forbid, we don't want it to be under such circumstances, but here we hear about synagogues closing down, and people are discussing, okay, how are we going to daven? Are we going to pray, to say Kaddish, and all that? And of course, Mikra Megila is also a question that comes up. So Rabbi Lau, the chief rabbi of Israel, said that he said you have to hear Mikra Megillah directly. I don't know what he bases it on, meaning that if someone, when I say I don't know what he bases it on, is that I mean that a reality such as ours never existed before, right? You have to hear the voice of a person. It's our voice, which was transmitted through electromagnetic waves. It's still our voice. The argument that this is not our voice because it's broke, it was translated into electromagnetic waves or pulses and then retranslated into voice. I think it's a bit of a stretch. Probably in other situations it would have counted, but the reality such as ours did not exist before. So it's hard to say what the rabbis would have said had they lived today. I believe that the rabbis who made a takana that you have to hear Mikra Megillah from a scroll would have said that in our situations, if you hear it through a virtual reading, you're Yotzer Dehovah. And I think that's a good solution for places where people cannot go to the synagogue because of restrictions. Things like that happen also during Sandy. I don't remember if the storm happened around. It was in the summer actually, but still people wanted to come to the synagogue and we're stuck at home. So I think that is possible. Who knows? Maybe by next week I will schedule and I'll ask people who are in different time zones to schedule a virtual Megillah reading where the Koreh reads from a kosher scroll and connects other people through Zoom. I think it's a good solution. Yes, Yosef, you have a question?
Would it be the source? I know that there's a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah that talks about a shofar and a bor.
Yeah.
Hearing the echo and I think I actually heard from you once that people misinterpret it and extend that to like microphones and such. So is it from the same source that they're getting the Megillah reading from?
The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah is interesting. I heard this. I learned from my professor in Bar Ilan himself, Bar Ilan, Meir Bar Ilan, who studied Masechet Rosh Hashanah with again in the what I mentioned all the time, the sit in life with its context, right? In the life of people of the period. So in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, you have this very strange Mishnah, התוקע לתוך הבור או לתוך הדות, אם כל שופר שמע יצא, ואם כל הברה שמע לא יצא. If someone blows shofar into a pit or into a sort of a underground, it's an underground storing vessel, which still exists, by the way, in Europe. They found in several places, or are still using it because the ground is cooler, so they dig into the ground and use it as storage places. So the most commentators explain that the reason that you blow shofar into the bor or into the dut, into this big vessel, whether it's underground or above the ground, is because of the sakana, because the Greeks or the Romans forbade blowing shofar, and then you have to do it with in the bow or the dud. But it doesn't make a lot of sense because you have to be standing inside to do it. If you are in the outside, blowing inside, it will echo to the outside and they will hear it even better. So and if you're inside, you will hear it as well. You know, it's what do you mean if kol shofar shama yatsa and kol havara lo yatsa? If your intention is to blow shofar, you will keep blowing until you hear shofar. You know what I mean? The Mishnah says if you heard shofar, you're good. But if you heard staccato, like broken voices, you're not Yetzer Hara. So Professor Bar Ilan explained based on other sources and incantation bowls and all kind of artifacts from the time that and I think what was found was pieces of furniture or vessels that had writings and incantations on them to drive away evil spirits. So that makes sense if you think about the Mishnah as saying someone blows into shofar into the bor or into the dut to drive away evil spirits and to grant blessing, to bestow blessing upon the food that you store in those places, right? In that case, what you hear, you're not even intending to hear shofar, right? And it has nothing to do with the echo. The case that people usually bring up when they want to speak about not hearing directly something is the great synagogue of Alexandria, where the Hazan was so big that the Hazan had to raise flags for people to see and hear Amen. I think that that when we talk about sound that is transmitted over large distances, we just have to deal with the fact that there was nothing like that in the past. In the past, the way to transmit sound was through maybe a basic megaphone, like without just a cone that amplified your voice but did not alter it. And I think that from a scientific and halakhic point of view, we can argue that the voice that you hear through the microphone, through any other medium, is your own voice. It would be interesting to ask this question: what that when we don't have a clear halachic stand on it, we could look into the legal system, right? in the legal system, a recording is considered once it was done under, within legal parameters, is valid as testimony. Like if someone was recorded self-incriminating, then that will be accepted. Nobody could claim this is not Mr. A talking; it's his voice on a recording, right? So I think that just common sense tells us this is your voice. The only problem would be if it's not Bisman Emet, if it's not in real time. But if we do it online in real time, I don't think there is a problem there.
When you don't, excuse me, when you don't have a minyan, you don't need a minyan for Kriyat Megillah.
Right.
So why can it not be a pre-recorded something that you listen to?
Oh, so that is also a possibility. So because you don't need a minyan, I also suggested that. Preferably if you have a kosher Megillah at home, but you don't know the Ta'amim. So I recorded and I'm sure there are plenty of recordings. I know there's a Moroccan one. I only offer two options. They're both Sephardi Yerushalmi. One of them is 35 minutes long. One of them is 40 minutes long. So it depends on how, maybe I should do one which is 15 minutes long. But yeah, definitely you could do that. You could follow your Megillah while listening to a recorded Megillah. So that being said, hopefully, who knows? Hopefully, all the restrictions will be lifted by Monday. As everybody's praying at the kotel or maybe in quarantine for that. But interesting, what everybody's praying for is for the scientists to find a cure. So finally, we have to admit that, just sitting and learning Torah all day long is not enough. We need the doctors, we need the scientists, right? Anyway, I'm not complaining. I wanted to look at the Ilchot Kriyat Megillah, something interesting which has to do with the reality that, it keeps evolving, and that is the status of women in Halacha. So in Shulchan Aruch, Ilchot Megillah, we read, one second. That's here. So we see this. Siman Tafresh Peitet, 689. שהכל חייבים בקריאת מגילה ובו 6 סעיפים. So he says, הכל חייבים בקריאתה. Everybody's obligated to hear Megillah. אנשים ונשים וגרים ועבדים משוחררים. Men, women, converts, and liberated or freed slaves. And the Mishnah Berurah explains why nashim ve'avda kirai davar shazman nigrama, even though reading Megillah is a time-dependent mitzvah, mikol makom hayavot she'afen hayu be'oto hanes, they are obligated because they were part of the miracle. The mitchila eta gzera gam aleim kidichtiv bikra, because the gzera included them. But mitchila doesn't mean that later it wasn't. From the very beginning, everybody was included in that decree. Even we could also say that it seems like that most of the rabbinic mitzvot women were included. They found a way to include women as well. But the Mishnah Berurah continues, ולכן צריך האיש לקרותה בביתו לפני הבתולות והמשרתות. And it says, therefore, the man must read it at home for those who are not married and for the servants who are Jewish, meaning that if a woman is married, her husband will read it for her. ובקצת מקומות נוהגים שהן הולכות לבית הכנסת לעזרת נשים לשמוע קריאה. In some places, there is the custom for the women to go to the synagogue to hear the reading from עזרת נשים. אכן צריך עיון איך יוצאים שם נשים, but it's not clear how they fulfill their obligation. דאי אפשר לשמוע שם כדין. You can't really hear well in the עזרת נשים. So that's interesting, I think, because it tells us a little bit about the עזרת נשים in Europe that was, or at least where the Hafetz Haim lived, he's not talking about the noise that comes from the men's section to the women's section, just the fact that it is separated. In many places, the Hazrat Nashim was separated by a wall, so, and with little windows, you really couldn't hear much the reading. The Sharet Tshuva writes that יש נוהגים לומר לאישה שתברך הברכה והר יקרא לה להוציאה ואין לעשות כן אלא הקורא יברך. Some people say let the woman say the bracha and then you read for her. Says no, you should read. The person who reads, he should do that. And the Ba'er Etev, in the Ba'er Etev, he adds Katan Motzi Nashim, a minor שהגיע לחינוך, meaning is 6-7 years old. Now he understands what the Megillah is for. He could read the Megillah for a woman, and that will cover her obligation. And the minor could read for a minor, and the woman for a woman. All that shows us already from the commentary on this first Saif that women apparently cannot read the Megillah for men. But we'll have to continue with the Shulchan Aruch and see what happens there. So we read here, אחד הקורא ואחד השומע מן הקורא יצא ידי חובתו. Whether you read the Megillah or you heard someone reading it, you fulfill your obligation. והוא שישמע ממישהו חייב בקריאתה. But you must hear it from someone who himself is obligated to read. לפיכך אם היה קורא חירש או קטן או שוטה, therefore if the reader is deaf or a minor or שוטה, which is like someone who's not intelligent, השומע ממנו לא הוא mentally ill, השומע ממנו לא יצא, if you heard his קריאה, לא יצא. Now, that'll be the Ateret Zkenim adds here, and that's important to know. חירש, ומורי כתב, בבית חדש, רבי יואל סירקיס wrote, חירש לכתחילה לא יצא, ובדיעבד יצא. The deaf person ideally should not read it, but if he read it, יצא. What are we talking about here? The status of the deaf in halacha is very, I would say, problematic, and we'll get back to it in a second. But I want to continue first with what happens with nashim. השומע, so it says, ויש אומרים שהנשים אינם מוציאות את האנשים. Now that is very intriguing because we read in Saif Aleph, Hakol Hayavim Bikirata, everybody is obligated to read Megillah or to hear, men and women. And then in Saif Bet we read, Ehada Kore v'Ehada Shomem Nekratza Dechovato. If you heard someone else reading, you fulfilled your obligation, as long as the reader Hayav Bikirata. So if we follow those two rules, women are obligated to read Megillah, and B, if you heard from someone who's obligated, you fulfill your obligation. So that brings us to the conclusion that if a woman read the Megillah for men, she covers for them, right? But it says here, ויש אומרים שהנשים אינם מוציאות את האנשים. Right? Some people say that women cannot read for men. Now, the commentators, one of the commentators, Olat Shabbat says here, בחירש לכו לעלמא אין מוציאים את האחרים בקריאתם. A deaf person definitely does not cover for others. ובנשים יש אומרים שאינם מוציאות. וכי יש אומרים קיים על העיקר. And that, we follow that יש אומרים as עיקר. So I'm stopping this sharing for a second. And I want to go back to the general concept that we spoke about in halakha. Remember that we discussed in length the approach of the Shulchan Aruch. So recap very, very quickly what is happening with the Shulchan Aruch. When we look at halachot like that, this is where it's confusing. Remember that the three pillars of halakha that we rely on today are Rambam, Tur, and Shulchan Aruch. But the Shulchan Aruch himself referred to the Rif, Rabbi Yitzhak Al-Fasi, the Rambam, and the Tur. But when we look at those three authors, the Rambam, the Tur, and the Shulchan Aruch, there's a very, each one of them is his unique approach. And because of that unique approach, we could say that the work of Maimonides has not been accepted as a binding book of halakha, and similarly, the book of the Arba Turim was not accepted. The problem with Rambam is that he presents only one halakha for all. Is monolithic. There's only one opinion. There's no flexibility. There's no diversity. The problem with the Tur, that he presents too many opinions on each halacha, 4 or 5 different opinions, and even if you choose one opinion that you always want to follow, you will run into conflicts where in one chapter maybe you are more in line with one author, in another chapter you're more in line with another author. So the Rambam had one opinion only. The Tur had too many opinions. The Beit Yosef solved the problem by presenting more than one opinion, but not in a certain way and without names. Whereas the Tur would say, this is what the Rambam says, this is what my father says, this is what I say, this is what Rashi says. The Shulchan Aruch says, some people say this, some people say that, or this is halacha, and some people say that. So here we have a classic case of stam ve'yesh omrim. Stam meaning a neutral halacha without mentioning the author, without mentioning status, and the second stage of yesh omrim, some people say. Now, if we don't know the rules of the Shulchan Aruch, we would have said, based on logic, that the first segment is binding and the second is the minority, right? If I tell you, for example, you shouldn't play, students should not play outside during recess, but some say that they can, right? We understand logically that the rule that should be followed is the first one. Only some people say they are the exception. And most of the commentators agree that when the Shulchan Aruch presents a stam v'yesh omrim, first a general statement without qualifications, and then yesh omrim, some people say halacha kistam, we followed the first one. But here it's interesting, you see that the Olat Shabbat, the commentary here, says, the Olat Shabbat, I will say exactly who this is. Olat Shabbat is also from Poland, commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, and this is the opinion that we follow. Why? Where from? We don't know. Maybe he brings a certain contradiction between the words of Shulchan Aruch, but we don't have a clear indication that this is the halacha. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. So we continue here with the Shulchan Aruch, right? So it says, some say that women cannot fulfill the obligation for men, and we look for the commentators to say, why is that so? Here, I think the Bahri for the Bah here. Here. So the Magen Avraham says, Velo dami lener Chanukah. This, in the neighborhood of Megadim, this is not like Ner Chanukah, where women could light candles for a man. Deshane Megila, dehave kmo kriyat Torah. Megillah is like reading the Torah. Perush, upsula mipnei kvod hatzibur, ולכן אפילו ליחיד מוציאה דלה פלוג. And therefore, even when she reads for herself, when she reads for one person, she cannot cover for him because la plug, they did not make a distinction. This is amazing in a negative way, because what we see here is that even in a place where women were included, and the halacha says that they're obligated and they should read, we see that there's a tendency to push her away. Let's look more commentator in the Haggah. The Rama adds, ויש אומרים, אם האישה קוראה לעצמה, מברכת לשמוע מגילה, שאינה חייבת בקריאה, that even if a woman reads for herself, she says, לשמוע מגילה, instead of לקרוא מגילה, Even if she is the reader, she says, I'm obligated to hear, not to read, only that there's no one else to read for me. So I'm making myself hear. She'ena chayvet b'kri'ah, she's not obligated to hear Megillah. How can you say that she's not obligated to read? How can you say that she's not obligated to read? The Magen Avraham says, because we hold that she cannot fulfill the obligation for men. You see, this is a circular argument. I'm going back now, full screen, I can see everyone. And I want to discuss this for a second, because the Ramah doesn't agree with Maran, and we don't know who are the Yesh Omrim. All the good questions. We don't know exactly what the Yesh Omrim. But this is what is happening here. Look at the process. Look at the not evolution. It's a devolution of halakha here, right? Look what happened. The Mishnah says, "Nashim hayavot b'mikra Megillah she'afen hayu b'oto hanes." Women must. It says hayavot b'mikra Megillah. More than mikra Megillah, to read the Megillah, not to hear the Megillah. The halakha says women must read Megillah. Why? Why are they obligated, even though it's a time-dependent mitzvah? Because they were part of the miracle. Thank you so much. And finally, women are included. They're also in danger. Oh, yes, and the miracle happened because of Esther. We forgot that. Okay, so it's called Megillat Esther, right? But still, okay. Now, the only reason that we include them is because they were Be'oto Hanes. It's fine, good. Then you say, a rule. If you are obligated, you could represent others who are also obligated. But some people say that they don't. Now we take those, some people who say that they don't, right? And we say, if a woman cannot cover for a man, who can she read for? Right? If a woman cannot read for a man, that means that there's no such thing. That's what the halakha, the halachic logic is taking us to. Says the concept of a reading of a woman doesn't exist. And therefore, she cannot say the bracha al mikra Megillah, because there's no such thing for her to read the Megillah. All she can do is hear the Megillah. But why was it that we say that she cannot read the Megillah for men? Because we say Mikra Megillah is like Kriyat Torah. No, it's not. It only resembles. Remember the class that I did last week about analogies? Those of you, in Yossi's house, we spoke about analogies. This is exactly this case. We make an analogy between Mikra Megillah and Kriyat Torah. But how different they are. Think of the differences between Mikra Megillah and Kriyat Torah. First of all, first difference between the Torah and the Megillah, the Torah has Hashem names multiple times. The Megillah doesn't have that. The Megillah is 2 degrees below the Torah in terms of sanctity. This is what the Rabbi said in the Talmud. The Torah was written through Nevuah. The Nevi'im were written through Ruach HaKodesh, and the Ketuvim, the scripture, through a lesser level of Ruach HaKodesh. So that's the second. The other difference is you only read Torah Minyan, but you can read Megillah Be'ahid. The reason that you read Megillah in a gathering is because you usually don't have people who could read the Megillah, that everybody's knowledgeable. But other than that, everyone could read at home. So no, Mikra Megillah is not like Kriyat Torah. Why are we saying that it's the same? Because they look alike. Because I take a scroll on which words are written, and I need to know the pronunciation, and there's ta'amim. But other than that, there's no similarity, right? Another difference, men are not obligated to hear the Torah, except for maybe Zachor. Nobody's obligated. It's a takana. There's no hiyuv. We're not even clear if it's the Rabbanan, but the Megillah is an obligation. So this is the kind of analogy that is really intuitive and not logic. We're not drawing similarities between the laws and the details of the halakha as it applies to Kriyat Torah and the Megillah, but rather we say they resemble each other. Similarly, I could have said that reading the Declaration of Independence, right, is like Kirat Torah because it's written by hand on scroll and it's a sacred text to some people, right? So women cannot read it, right? But it's not true because there are many women who are signed on the Declaration of Independence, right? No, I'm kidding. That was a joke. It was a bad. Yeah. I want to see if everybody's listening. You're listening. Okay, good.
Rabbi, Josh,
Yes.
why is this? And I first of all, if my comparison is disrespectful, I apologize. Why is this is some sort of Islamic style of ruling halachically against women?
Okay. So let me say something. It's not.
If it's only because it's Megila Esther and it's the woman is the main protagonist, that we having all this indulgence.
Right. I agree. So I'll answer that. So but there's the good point that Yoshua brought up is it deliberately against women? What is going on here? So first, yes, there was a tendency to keep women away from the public sphere, from the public realm in the synagogue. So because Kirat Torah was associated with the public setting, they said that a woman cannot read, and then they extended it even to home to say, even though, and here's my problem with this kind of not circular argument. It's like, first we say, you can do A, but you can't do B, and if you can do B, you cannot do A. But I decided on that. So what happens here is I said, a woman cannot read the Torah. Why? Which we have to understand what it means, right? Okay. Now we say Megillah is like Torah, and therefore a woman cannot read Megillah also because of the respect for the public. And now we say, since she cannot read in public, she cannot even read it to one person at home because the rabbi did not make a distinction. How can you say that it did not make a distinction when it is written in the rule? Lo tikra b'Torah mipnei kvod hatzibur. It's written in the rule that it's because of the public. Meaning, if it's not in public, there's not a problem. But you don't read Torah not in public, so it's not applicable. But Megillah you do read in private, right? So, we have to understand what is the definition of that concept of kavod hatzibur, and why the rabbis of in Poland in the 16th, 17th century decide to extend it to the home as well. So mipnei kavod hatzibur, this is in Masechet Barachot, in Masechet Megillah, it's mentioned that hakol olim leminyan shiv'a, everybody is counted as one of the 7 olim, minors and women and minors included. But why would a woman not get an aliyah? So now, here's a common mistake that people make, that they mix today's reality with the reality of the past, right? So when they talk about this Gemara, they say the Gemara says that the woman cannot get an aliyah. That's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Isha lo tikra b'tzibur, a woman cannot read. So what was the reality of the past? When the public Torah reading was established, the idea was that each person who goes up to the Torah reads his or her own portion. After a while, and it was a while, the rabbis realized that some people cannot read. And I think that's something that we see even today. Even people who prepare and are assigned a certain aliyah, and they don't read it perfectly, right? It's not an easy task. Okay, so what was done as the solution? They appointed a shliach tzibur for the what people call the laner or the koreh, the Baal Koreh, to represent the people who get aliyah. So you get an aliyah, and the reader reads for you. But that minhag ramified in different ways. So the general trends today are those. In the Yemenite community, in most Yemenite traditional communities, everyone is expected to read his own aliyah. So if you have 7, there's no such thing as a layaner, as a reader. You're supposed, there's someone standing by you to correct you, usually quite aggressively, and then you have to go and read your own part. And that's just sort of like, now it's sort of like disappearing, but people are still loyal to the Yemenite tradition, still do it. Actually, I once caught an imposter because of that. That was a really long time ago, maybe 30 years ago, when I was a young, no, it was 1996, 1998. I was a young rabbi in Colombia, and every year a man would come, a Yemenite man, all dressed in white, giving blessing and mystical visions to the whole community. And people would give him a lot of money for that. And I felt that something is wrong with him. Growing up in Yerushalayim, I saw a lot of characters. So I I honored him with an aliyah. And when he went up to the Torah, I said, please read. And he refused. He says, no, you read. I said, no, you're Yemenite. You should read. That's your minhag. And he read, and he made horrible mistakes. And so at the time, he was probably in his mid-50s. So he was born in the 1940s. And I remember I told him, I never saw a Yemenite man your age who cannot read the Torah. And he got tremendously upset, started cursing and yelling and screaming. It turned out that he was really no rabbi, no mystic, no mekubal. He had a garage, a body shop in Israel. And then he figured out it's easier to go to communities outside Israel and be a mekubal. So he dressed in white, grew up his beard, and went places and gave people blessings, bought houses all over the United States. And I found out that he's not, because he was not able to read the Torah. Anyway, that's the Yemenite minhag. That's the Purim story. He was in disguise, and we exposed him. But so the Yemenite minhag is everyone, each oleh reads his own aliyah. The Ashkenazi minhag is we have a representative, right, a shaliach for everyone. And even if you want to read your own, we don't let you, because we don't want to embarrass those who cannot read. In the Sephardic world, it's in between. There is a Baal Koreh who prepares the whole parasha, but if someone comes up and says, I want to read my own aliyah, you let him. So we have 3 options. Okay. So now, think about when the rabbi said, Isha lo tikra b'Torah mipnei kvod hatzibur, that statement was made when each person read his own aliyah, right? So why is it kvod hatzibur? It's not about kol isha. Some people wanted to say it's kol isha. I know it's not kol isha because it's not singing. She's reading a sacred text. There's no singing there. Why is it kvod hatzibur? Because Mr. Cohen went up and read his aliyah and made a couple of mistakes. And Mr. Levy did the same thing with his aliyah, and Shlishi did the same thing. And then Mrs. Levy, whatever, Mrs. Israel, right, goes up for the 4th aliyah, and she reads perfectly, and she nails it, and every word, every letter is there. And the oivei, like all the men are now sitting and saying, oh, we wish, and I know that because I was sitting in a shul when they interviewed a maharat for the role of an assistant rabbi. And she was so brilliant, so learned, that some of the men there who think that they know how to learn came to me and said that they are ashamed that they did not achieve in their 60 years of life what she did in 35 years, right? But they said it in a sort of in a humble way. But you can imagine what happens in the synagogue when more women go up and they read better than the men. We don't want to hear that, so we push them aside. Kvod hatzibur. Now, it's interesting that in Elizabethan England, Christian women were not allowed to read scriptures in front of men. unless they are noble women and they read for their lesser servants. So the same concept of the kvod tzibur is not a question of hearing a woman or anything like that, but rather knowledge gives you status. So for a woman to be more learned than men was a problem for them. So now we take it back to Megillah, and we see the paradox that happens here. The Shulchan Aruch says clearly,
Rabbi,
yes.
I have a question.
Wait. So let me just finish this malach and then the question, okay?
Perfect.
So and then the question. So the Shulchan Aruch says if you're obligated, you could cover for others, but then he says, but some say women cannot read. Then the commentary says why they can't read because of kvod tzibur, because Mikra Megillah is like Kriyat Torah, and we proved that it's not the same because they have completely different halachot. But even okay, let's say you know what, you're right. Reading Megillah in public is like reading Torah in public, and therefore a woman should not read in public. But at home, for her husband, for other people, in private, there's no tzibur, she should be able to read. No. How could we justify that? That lo plug, we did not make a distinction, is a very, very vague concept that deserves its own research. But I think that what they're trying to say here with the lo plug is the tzibur now ceases to be that tzibur which is sitting in the synagogue at the time the woman gets an aliyah and listens to her, but rather it's the whole tzibur. All Jewish men are offended when that one woman in one house, wherever she is, reads for her husband, because now she is superior to that collective concept of men. So to sum up, what we've seen when we went through today, just only one or two sentences in Shulchan Aruch is how the halacha went from saying that women must read Megillah to saying women must only hear Megillah, because there's no such concept as reading Megillah for women, to the extent that a new baracha was invented, that if a woman reads for herself, she says, Asher kiddushon lishmoa Megillah, I'm hearing myself, as if to say, I'm not really reading, because a woman cannot read. So to say, we really want to restore the crown, it's fitting because Esther was the queen, we should say women should read at home, should read at gatherings. To the synagogue, there's still time for that in the Orthodox community, but definitely this is something that's written in the Shulchan Aruch. So Nahman, let's hear your question, and I'll conclude the recording of the podcast here, or I'll pause it for a second. Yes.
This is not similar to the story of the Gemara of the wife of Rabbi Meir, and the Gemara praisers and put her so much high in knowledge, but then you have some opinion that says that she take herself on the roof, and this is not similar. The rabbis do something to put her down and to not put the woman like she can get to the level of the men.
Okay, good question. So you're okay. I wanted to continue on the podcast, but I stopped it anyway. That is also on the podcast. So at least you have it in a recording. So it's exactly the same. Boria was a thorn in the side of the rabbis, because not only was she learned, she was outspoken. You know, there's a famous story about her meeting Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. They ran into each other, and Rabbi Yossi HaGlili tells her, "Be'ezo derech nilech lelod," which is the way to take to get to the city of Lod. And she kicked him, and she said, "Glili shoteh haya lecha lomar be'ezo lelod." You should have said, "How Lod?" Like, where Lod? 2 words. And then she goes on to say, it's funny because when she rebukes him that he shouldn't talk to her, she speaks much more than what he told her. So she was obviously, this kind of outspoken woman. And so what you're saying about the end of Beruria is not really written in the Talmud. I think Rashi is the first one to bring it, but maybe he's relying, I'm not sure, I have to check the sources. I think that Rashi is relying on a book called Maaseh Nisim by Rav Nisim Gaon of North Africa, and I think that story itself.
According to Mark Shapiro, that was a forge. That's the.
That's the next thing I was going to say. That even the story, if it appears in Maaseh Nisim, apparently it has a foreign source, not necessarily forged, but rather it's a Christian story that has been adopted and put on. Bruria was framed. In other words, there were a lot of stories like chastity stories. Yes, you see.
Since it says in the Megillah specifically that a person everybody read it kilshonam, everybody read it in their own language, why can't we be yotzer with reading it in English?
Oh, that's the ideal way to read it. Really, we should read it in English.
Understand it, otherwise you don't understand what the nace is.
I know. So it's interesting that the argument of the Talmud of why you are Yotzeh when you read in Hebrew is a bit strange. The Talmud says, why are we Yotzeh Dehovah when we understand, when we read the Megillah in Hebrew, even if you don't understand Hebrew, because they say there are certain Persian words in the Megillah like ha'ashteranim that we don't know what it means, but still we read it. But that's a very weak argument, because anyone who took the SATs know the concept of reading around it. When they ask you about comprehension, even if you don't actually, that's one of the exercises, right? They take a word and they change it with some gibberish, and you're supposed to know what it means because you read around it. So I don't know what hashteranim or hashdarpenim are, or patshegen, but I understand it's some kind of an official position or official writing, and most of the Megillah I understand. It's like saying, if you read most of the Megillah from the writing and some of it by heart, you're covered, right? So I think that's the reason that the Orthodox leadership, and even non-Orthodox leadership, is so much against it, because for them it's like the last frontier in the world of liturgy and tefillah between us and non-Jews, right? Because Christianity went through this transition of moving from the Latin to the vernacular in different stages, but we feel that only Hebrew is the language of tefillah, and that's a problem, because we don't, let alone Megillah, put Megillah aside, tefillah, people pray in a language they don't understand, and translation is not really helpful. So this, like, also Ot Hazon Lamoed, right? It's a long way there.
Rabbi, is it true on that mindset that the Megillah was originally in Aramaic and not Hebrew?
No, I don't think so. If it was written in any language, originally it would have been Persian. There are a lot of Persian words, but probably it was written in Hebrew. The reason I'm saying that is the language of the Megillah is very, very specific. It can't be translation. It's so poetic, and there's so much attention to detail. I wrote about it I sent the articles about Megillat Esther, or maybe not. Maybe I only sent the podcasts out. But the attention to details in the Megillah of when does it say Hamalka, when Hamelech, verbs that repeat, just like Megillat Ruth, even though it's from a later period, it shows that it was written originally in Hebrew. But like Yossi said, we should read it in English. Some people said it has to be written on a scroll with ink in English to read it that way. And I tried to order. I think last year I was looking for someone to do it for me. To have it, but okay. After the Shabbat umbrella, let's first get the Shabbat umbrella, then. You turn off the mic again. Once again, yes.
As an interesting point, the word karpas, okay,
yeah.
Persian karafes means celery.
I didn't know that. So you spent more time in LA than I did. Yeah. No, for sure. Just one other interesting, Yoshua, before you say that, there's an interesting, if we're already talking about the Farsi language, first of all, you have a scholar in LA, Avram Greenstein, he teaches at the AJR, who did his master's, I think, or maybe a PhD even on the Persian elements of the Talmud Bavli. So if you want to connect you to him, I think he's a very knowledgeable guy. one interesting word that we borrowed from the Farsi through the Megillah from the Persian language and became so dominant in Hebrew today is the word dat, dati. You know, when people say religious, they say dati. That word is a Persian word, and it only appears in the Megillah, kedat hamelech, and it means the law. And the Persians were sticklers for law. You realize when you read the Megillah carefully, you realize that that when Esther and Mordechai asked the king to reverse the decree of Haman, he said, I cannot, because it was a royal decree. I can only give you permission to defend yourself. That's amazing. Even the king cannot reverse his royal law. Now, some people argue that the word dat is not a Persian word. It isn't a Hebrew word. Why? Because it does appear in the Torah. I'll show you where. I mean, that's what people claim. That in Parashat Vezot HaBracha, at the end of the book of Devarim, 1 second, I'm pulling up the text. Here, you see this word, וזאת הברכה אשר ברך משה איש האלוהים בני ישראל לפני מותו, ויאמר, השם מסיני בא, וזרח משעיר למו, Hashem came from Sinai and shone from the mount of Seir. He appeared from the mount of Paran and came from myriads of holiness. Mimino eshdat lamo. On his right hand, eshdat. So this, you see, this is ktiv. This is how it's written, and this is how we read it. And it fascinates me that every Baal Koreh makes sure to read, like in the Sephardic trope, is Mimino eshdat lamo. God forbid it doesn't sound like one word. However, in one of the fascinating books about the Hebrew language, one of the first linguists of the new era who was Orthodox, Rabbi Aharon Marcus, who was a German doctor who became a Hasid, writes about this word. And the book is called Barzilai. It's a fascinating book. And he says that this word, this reading, Eshdat, was based on the Persian. The later scholars who did not know what that means interpreted it as the fire of religion. But that is anachronistic because that word did not exist in the time of Vezot HaBracha. And rather this Ashdat is like the word Ha'ashadot, other place, which means foundations. So, which makes more sense, not the fire of religion, but rather the foundations of the Torah. So that's an interesting example of how a later word in Persian came into our language and then redirected or reworked our understanding of ancient texts. So
I have a question.
yes.
I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the class. But as far as reading, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but as far as like reading Megillah over Skype medium or
Yeah.
things like this, for people that cannot get to a synagogue or don't have a synagogue or reader, like in Brazil, I'm reading for the group in Brazil. When I read for Temple Moses, I'm also going to include them. Is there anybody that says that?
I said that was the whole shiur. That's what we started with. We said like in the first 10 minutes. That's what you missed.
I know I missed that exactly. Sorry.
Yeah, so you could. I said you could. You should. Yeah.
Yeah, but why Rabbi Ovadia Joseph prohibited on the Yalkut Yosef?
You know, it's his.
He says that it's prohibited to hear it on a means like he just described, right?
I discussed it before. I said, because people argue that that the voice that comes through the machine is not your voice, but that really is illogical. In any other legal system, it is accepted. There's no reason why it would not be accepted in halakha. It's clearly my voice that's being carried over the as electromagnetic signs.
Okay, so what is
signal?
Okay, so who approve it besides you?
No, nobody approves it. Common sense approves it,
Okay, no, because
the question is different, Yoshua.
I
think wait. But then to ask your question, I think that the question should be asked differently. Who gave him the authority to prohibit it?
Exactly. Who?
No, no one. He assumed it. That's part of the evolution of a posek. You study the text, you come to a logical conclusion, and you move on with it. That's it.
The authority was given by the people. I think people just accepted it. So that's the authority was given by the people.
We accept it is written. That's what we do. But doesn't work that way. You have to prove why. And actually, he always says, you have to prove that. It's funny because I posted online about drinking on Purim, and someone commented, "How come that I'm usually so lenient and I'm here so adamantly against drinking?" It's like, well, you want to hear what people want to hear, what they want to hear. I say, instead of saying, how can I be against drinking on Purim, say, how can anyone be today in favor of getting drunk when we know?
So
anyway, I need to go because I have another show.
Rabbi,
last question.
You nailed it, because we are so hesitant to allow people to heal the Megillah, and we are very adamant to tell everybody to get drunk.
Yes. Okay. So have a happy Purim. Drink a lot of water, and and enjoy Purim. Hopefully.
Shabbat shalom, hasakuba.
Shabbat shalom. Chag sameach.
Kombucha.
Sameach.
See you tomorrow.
Bye bye.